right now at 6 why the search for a boat that reportedly sank off the Oregon coast is over for now. Plus, a barrage of ads pushing to shutter a local primate research center. What we found when we went inside.
The development of COVID vaccine saved literally millions of lives, and that wouldn't have been done without non-human primate research.
Then, should Oregon be allowed to once again send foster kids out of state?
They send these kids out of state and they become forgotten children.
And later, where the days of free weekend parking are about to be over.
It's tough on us, owning a restaurant, and then you have to pay for parking.
First at 6 on this Friday, a massive search effort for a possible missing vessel off the coast of Cannon Beach. That is where people reported multiple flares last night fired over the open ocean while the Coast Guard spent the night and the morning searching for any signs of a downed ship. Officials tell us so far they have not found any debris. Celine Stevens has the latest from Cannon Beach.
Around 10 a.m. Friday, the Coast Guard announced that they called off the search following what they initially thought was boat debris, turning out to just be general garbage, as well as no other signs of distress being noted. I spoke with the Coast Guard about protocol for situations like this, as well as others in the area who watched it all unfold.
Well, if that was my family or my friends out there, I would certainly want all hands on deck, so better be safe than sorry.
Thursday evening, the U.S. Coast Guard got a report of 4 to 5 orange flares that were seen from someone at a hotel. The flares, reportedly, in the water about 2 miles off Cannon Beach near Ecola State Park.
At that time, we assumed the distress phase for a search and rescue incident, and our team sent out a helicopter as well as small boats from, a small boat, motor lifeboat from Coast Guard Station Tillamook Bay.
Lieutenant Chris Butters with U.S. Coast Guard District 13 tells me they also brought in an aircraft from Sacramento, California, and another boat from Station Cape Disappointment, catching the eye of many in the area.
Heard the helicopter, pretty distinctive sound, the Coast Guard helicopter, and we saw it flying pretty slow out over the water and with spotlight on.
So I was in our hotel room, just overlooking the beach on the second story, and I just looked out the window and I saw a couple of large boats with a lot of lights right around 9, maybe 9:30 last night.
Around midnight, Butters say they found what they initially thought was boat debris in the water, but turned out to be garbage.
Yeah, I just saw helicopters flying around, or at least one, and then some boats that had searchlights on them.
Yeah, I guess they don't really have any choice but to go and check. How else would they validate whether it was true or not?
No boat was reported missing in the area, and around 10:30 Friday morning, they suspended the search pending any further developments. The thought of a potential sunken boat had many worried initially.
You just worry about the families. You see them one day and they might be gone the next. It's sad. It's real sad. It's just the reality of the ocean.
This coming a week after a vessel in Westport, Washington, did capsize with Captain John Stevenson still on board, who is now feared dead. Butters saying, even though this time it turned out that all appears to be well, you should always report a flare sighting.
So again, we always ask people, if you do see something, always call out of precaution. We'd much rather be safe about the situation.
Lieutenant Butters also says that taking video of whatever you see can help them with their search efforts. He also notes that Saturday starts National Safe Boating Week and encourages everyone to always use a life jacket, have emergency communication devices, and file a float plan, which involves telling a trusted person where you're going and when you'll be back. In Cannon Beach, Celine Stevens, KGW News.
Good advice there. Well, in your headlines tonight, Clackamas County detectives are investigating a shooting incident involving an Oregon City police officer. Police were called around 5 this morning to a home on Claremont Way near Hillendale Park over a domestic disturbance. That's where authorities say they found an armed man on the street who shot at one of the officers. The officer returned fire, but police say the man ended up taking his own life. The Oregonian reporting that man is a former Canby police sergeant, though the Oregon City police chief would not confirm that. No officers were injured, and the one who fired back is on leave, which is standard protocol. A reminder here, if you or anyone you know is having a mental health crisis, know that help is available 24/7. Just call or text the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988 to be connected 24/7. Again, that number is 988. In Gresham, police have just released images of 3 people they say are wanted in connection with a shooting that left a 13-year-old dead. Police want help finding 20-year-old Anthony Hunter Jr., 20-year-old Xavier Hirsch, and 16-year-old Terrell Coy. Back on April 27th, 13-year-old Liam Spanley Bailey was asleep in his bed when he was hit by a stray bullet. This was at the 11 Pines Apartments. If you see or know anything about these suspects, you're asked to call 911. In an update, we're learning more about an investigation into the West Coast Game Park Safari in Bandon after authorities raided it this week and served search warrants. Oregon State Police say a camel at the park had to be euthanized. They say it was suffering from multiple medical conditions and would have died if they tried to move it somewhere else. They also sent us pictures. You can see this lion's ribs through its fur there. Police say they have seized and relocated all of the other animals to places where they get the food and the care they need and deserve. No word yet on any criminal charges. And two middle school students from Western Washington are facing possible felony arson charges after police say they intentionally made a laptop catch fire at school. It happened yesterday in Centralia. School districts nationwide are warning about the trend spreading on TikTok where students are filming themselves forcing objects into the ports of school-issued Chromebooks until they begin to smoke and even catch fire. Police there say the 12 and 13-year-old boys did just that during class. No one was hurt. They were arrested and expelled for the rest of the school year. The judge also ordered the boys to stay off social media. Matt?
All right, David, we have had a cool day today, but at least the sun tried to come out for a while. Right now, tomorrow we're going to call that a weather impact alert day because we're going to have frequent showers. It's going to be a Saturday soaker. Some of the showers will get heavy later on in the day. Isolated thunderstorms mainly over or east of the Cascades. We'll keep an eye on that for you. And if we get some really intense showers, especially in the afternoon, we can get some local ponding of water on roadways. Some of the low-lying intersections may flood a bit, so keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, at the Timberline right now, that's the weather vane on top of the lodge. Well, that's a cloudy affair, but that's such an iconic symbol. Fun to look at. 38 degrees at Timberline right now. It's going to get even colder on the mountain. There'll be new snow on the mountain as we go through Saturday and Sunday. Right now, rain confined to the mouth of the Columbia River and then up north on the coast of Washington, the Olympic Peninsula, and Vancouver Island. But that'll all be sagging south overnight tonight. But if you're heading out this evening, no worries. It'll be dry, very much like it is right now. The cloud cover will keep the temperatures from dropping too quickly. So we've got a nice night on the way, relatively speaking, staying dry, but not the case tomorrow. Lots of showers on and off all day long. Noontime 54. We only make it up to 56. That's like 14 degrees below average for this time of year, David. But Sunday, things are looking up. We'll have more on that aspect of the forecast in a bit. Back to you.
No, talk about a soggy Saturday. Thanks, Matt. Now at 6, you have likely seen the ads from advocates pushing to close OHSU's Primate Research Center, and now KGW is getting a first-hand look inside the Beaverton facility and hearing from some other researchers. Investigative reporter Kyle LeBoche is here. Kyle, given the renewed attention around the complex, I'm curious to know what you found.
The Oregon National Primate Research Center has a rather nondescript entrance in Beaverton. There's an apartment complex on one side and a mini storage facility on the other. But behind the metal fencing, there's a sprawling 200-acre facility, home to nearly 4,500 monkeys, many of them used in medical research. At the Oregon National Primate Research Center, you'll find a property teeming with monkeys. Many of them are held in a large zoo-like setting with large open spaces and equipment.
Everybody gets 2 feedings of monkey chow biscuits a day.
Others are housed in covered shelters. In all, the research center is home to nearly 4,500 primates, although only about a third of them are used in medical research. We weren't provided with access to those caged primates, OHSU said, because exposure to outsiders could jeopardize the animal's health and disrupt research. OHSU says the Primate Center is crucial for advancing science, and studies on animals have led to new treatments and vaccines.
Just in recent years, that the development of COVID vaccine saved literally millions of lives, and that wouldn't have been done without non-human primate research.
The Beaverton facility, founded in 1962, has faced persistent opposition from animal rights groups. But recently, a medical ethics group, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, has turned up the heat in the Primate Center, running ads showing scenes of monkeys in small cages.
The writing is really on the wall, that the exciting research, the research that the public wants to invest in and wants to see conducted, doesn't involve monkeys in a cage.
The advertising blitz was aimed at forcing OHSU to close the Primate Center as a condition of buying Legacy Health. Although the merger fell through, the campaign gained traction. More than 10,000 Oregonians petitioned for the center to shut down, and Oregon Governor Tina Kotek publicly urged OHSU to plan for a humane closure, although her authority is limited. This week in Salem, animal activists pushed Oregon lawmakers to add an amendment to a bill in hopes of shutting down the Primate Research Center.
If we didn't have to use animals, I wouldn't. But because we use animals and we do whatever we can to improve their lifestyle, their psychological well-being, their health.
The director of the Primate Research Center says animal testing only happens when scientists can't use other research methods, and the center faces strict regulation and oversight, including regular audits. The lab's work is critical, say researchers, including Larry Sherman, who's studying how the brain deals with multiple sclerosis.
It may actually tell us how MS starts, which would be a great finding because it would allow us to actually eradicate MS altogether.
Closing the Primate Research Center wouldn't just impact the 420 employees that work here or the monkeys they care for, the director warns. It would be detrimental to research throughout the U.S. and the lives of patients hoping for a medical breakthrough.
We're bigger than Oregon, we're bigger than Portland, bigger than OHSU.
Funding is another concern. OHSU's Primate Research Center gets most of its funding, about 90%, from the National Institutes of Health. And recently, the Trump administration has tried to slash grants from the NIH.
Thanks, Kyle. Learned a lot. Appreciate your reporting on that. Tonight, lawmakers in Salem are considering major changes to the state's foster care system with a proposed bill that would allow Oregon to once again send kids out of state for treatment. Evan Watson's in the newsroom. Evan, this is just a few years after the state stopped that practice because of abuse.
That's right, David. This bill's supporters say it'll help foster children access behavioral health care. But many opponents say it's just winding back the clock. That includes Sheila McGonigal, a former Oregon foster kid, who tells me this would be regressive.
There were so many reports of these kids being abused and hurt. We fast forward and we want to repeat history.
Sheila McGonigal knows the life of a foster child.
I was in that system 60 years ago and aged out in 1979. It's horrible that it hasn't changed since that time.
When you say it hasn't changed all these years later, what do you mean by that?
They're suffering the same traumas I did.
She's against Oregon House Bill 3835. A detailed package that would allow Oregon to once again send foster children out of state for housing and treatment.
They send these kids out of state and they become forgotten children.
Oregon stopped that practice in 2019 following reports of abuse. McGonigal says there's nothing in this bill that convinces her that accountability or oversight would be better this time around.
They're going to have someone checking on this foster child every 15 days. Okay, it didn't happen before. What changed? What's changing? They've got extra employees? Don't think so.
But the foster care bill has prominent backers, including Governor Tina Kotek, who says it's unacceptable that foster kids are staying in hotels or emergency rooms when they could go elsewhere.
We know that too many children in our state have acute behavioral health care needs. We know our current system needs repair and is failing too many children. The status quo is unacceptable.
The bill would also narrow definitions around wrongful restraint or seclusion of children. A child psychiatrist at OHSU testified that medical providers are currently working in fear that they'll be accused of abuse.
There are many reports of potential abuse or neglect. They're not founded. Each one of these reports causes the person to be anxious, fearful for their jobs and their livelihoods.
Governor Kotek saying providers need direction.
Let me be clear. I do not support inappropriate restraint or abuse. What I do support is a system with strong crisis intervention training, clear and practical guidelines, and accountability. We want providers to know how and when to de-escalate.
But McGonigal and others.
It is just not okay. You know what? They deserve so much better than what they're getting.
Believe these changes would take the foster care system backwards. McGonigal wants a different approach.
I believe we can find the resources in Oregon. We need to have people who are tenacious and ambitious, and they want to find it for these kids. They deserve that much.
For years, Oregon DHS officials have said they struggled to find adequate places to house foster children because there's a lack of available foster homes and residential treatment centers. DHS supports this bill. A public hearing was held this week. It's yet to be scheduled for a vote. David?
Evan Watson in the newsroom tonight. Thank you, Evan.